One of my favorite stories that I read over the break. Just a perfect encapsulation of the corruption within the campaign financial system, the idiocy of Rick Scott, and just, again, a preview of why Republicans are not doing as well as they should be. Let's throw this up there on the screen. From the New York Times, how a record cash haul vanished for Senate Republicans. And this is the most stark. The campaign arm of the Senate Republicans collected $181.5 million by the end of July, but they have spent 95% of it. A lot of it was invested in, quote, digital, hyper-aggressive tactics have not yet paid off. And by have not paid off, they haven't paid at all in terms of what they were invested for. So essentially what they did is a time-honored tradition, Krystal, which is they took their money and then they invested it in trying to get more money. Except, here's the issue. Most people are not giving to the NRSC, they're giving to Trump. And what they point to specifically is that the incompetence of the NRSC, of Rick Scott specifically, has led to the organization of like donor meetings and others which are paying out almost nothing to some of these big donors. One of the ones that really caught my eye was this particular anecdote. The NRSC's large donor program has struggled. In August, 4 Senate candidates, including J.D. Vance, tracked to Nantucket, Massachusetts, it's an island in Cape Cod, for an event that netted an initial $25,000. A paltry payout for a candidate to get on a plane and to go out of their state. It should be, I mean, look, I don't know the exact dollar figure, but I'm going to assume many multiples.
Hundreds of thousands.
I believe John Fetterman just did this by going to the Hamptons and raised like untold amounts of money at a single party.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you can get $25K. If you're a Senate candidate in a hot race, you can get $25K dialing for dollars on the phone in a matter of hours and never have to leave your state, and miss time on the campaign trail and have the optics of having to fly to the Hamptons or fly to Nantucket or whatever. $25K is pathetic. That might be a decent haul if you're like a sort of mid-tier congressional candidate, but for a top-tier Senate race statewide, that is really, really sad.
Yeah, it's absolutely pathetic. And again, what they point to is that Scott's, quote, enormous gamble on trying to find new online donors has been a total flop. He tried to, but this is classic like MBA brain. He's like, I'm the businessman. I was very successful. I'm worth a lot of money. So I'm going to come in and invest all this money on finding new people for the Republican Party. And he pours all this money into it instead of just normal, just doing cringe, typical RNC stuff would have been better than what they're doing here.
Absolutely.
And now they don't have cash to spend in Arizona, in Ohio, in Georgia, in Pennsylvania. And if they do get bailed out, it's going to be Mitch McConnell's super PAC, which has to do so, and this doesn't have a chance in hell, Trump himself will have to pony up his money to try.
Happening.
Let me tell you something. That has never happened in the history of Donald Trump. He won't even pay his own legal bills, like his bills, let alone other people's bills.
Yeah.
So how do you think that is going to go? Just the TikTok here, which is basically like a time by time and initial description, is just a colossal waste of money, Krystal. In one point, into this online point, there's more than a $17 million deficit in this campaign to find new donors. So it's just a total waste. They've basically tried this far-flung strategy, didn't work. Now, in the crunch time, they don't have money. I mean, I was talking with some people. They actually said, they're like, look, put candidate equality aside. If we lose the Senate, this has just as much to do with it than just pure candidate equality. I hate to say it, but political fundraising works and works very, very well.
Yeah.
Television and more, a lot of old people watch it, and a lot of them are motivated by it.
The big dynamics in this election continue to be the national factors we're talking about. This is an exacerbating issue for the Republicans. And they keep saying, well, we spent all this money early, so that's why we're behind the 8 ball here. But that actually makes things worse, because if you spend all this money early and your candidates are still down in the polls, like, okay, so what did you do that was such a bad investment? And they have the numbers. I mean, the Senate Republicans, it looked like they had a gigantic war chest. They had collected $181.5 million by the end of July. They were way ahead of the Democrats, but now they've spent 95% of that. And it's not a Republican Party issue. The House arm is doing fine. No problem, fundraising-wise. Obviously, Mitch McConnell's PAC, they're also flush with cash. And this really, they are loving this. He and his people, oh my God. I mean, they're loving this whole thing because there were all these noises in the primary of this person and that person. Oh, I'm not going to vote for McConnell for majority leader. Oh, I don't like Mitch McConnell. He's not a good leader, et cetera, et cetera. And now, as we showed you with Blake Masters, they are completely dependent on the war chest that McConnell has amassed, because this is a disaster. And I think you're right. Like, there's a few things that this seems to smack of. First of all, yes, the like MBA brain, the rich arrogance of like, sure, people have been doing political fundraising for decades and decades, but I know how to do it differently, and I know how to do it better. So there's number one, there's like the rich guy MBA arrogance. There's also the fact that, he's also got some like rich guy laziness. He's out there like on his super yacht in Italy rather than here trying to fix what is a massive problem that he ultimately created. And then the third thing is this guy's a like noted fraudster. And that comes out in the tactics that they're using too, which are also a problem for them because they've really burned their own fundraising base. One scheme, I'm going to read from a bit of the article, one fundraising scheme that was used by the Senate committee involves sending an estimated millions of text messages that ask provocative questions like, should Biden resign? And then they would say, reply yes to donate. And those who replied yes would immediately have a donation process. So you think you're just like, yes, Biden should resign. And then meanwhile, they're hitting your bank account right then and there. So that has meant that their refund rate, so the percentage of people who are saying, I didn't mean to give this money, you better send this back to me, is way higher than on the Democratic side. They have 6.6% of direct individual donations this cycle, which are having to be refunded. That compares to, the equivalent committee on the Democrat side, only 1.67%, because they're using these like super aggressive, really shady tactics and burning their own fundraising base. So you have a situation now, which we'd covered before, where Democrats, as is typical as you get closer to a midterm election, grassroots fundraising increases as your base gets more excited, more focused on what's going on. Republicans going in the opposite direction, I think in part because of the way that they have been burned by some of these tactics, and also by the way that Trump really abuses the donor list and where they're most enthusiastic about him above anything else, really.
Yeah. And another one that always pisses me off, let me just read you this. Gary Kobe, Trump's longtime digital director, is an advisor to the committee, widely seen as the man behind the scenes of influence of the current digital operations. Two of his companies, Direct Persuasion, a digital agency, and Open Sesame, a texting firm, have been paid $4.6 million combined. Two others he has promoted, DirectSend and Red Spark Strategy, have received another $9.2 million. So they take your money and then they give it to themselves. And there's a lot of houses on the Potomac, mansions in McLean and elsewhere that are being paid for, boats, Nantucket vacation homes, getting paid for off of, listen, you may want to say, who amongst us really does reply to these text messages like, yes, Biden should resign? However, they're Americans too. They don't deserve to be defrauded, and that's what their money is being put towards. It's just totally outrageous. They're literally stealing their money. And they are, worse, doing damage to the cause that they raised that money supposedly to do anything about. So this is just a total, cluster. It's a huge problem for many of the senators or many Senate candidates in the battleground states, and they are very much making it known.
I didn't know Rick Scott was quite hated this much, because that's the other piece of this.
Well, I think they're very upset with him.
Yeah,
right?
Clearly there's a lot of leaks coming out of all quarters.
I think it's not just this, Krystal. Remember whenever he put out his plan to tax Medicare? I think that pissed a lot of people off because they're like, why are you saying this?
Shut the F up.
Yeah, they're like, shut up. They're like, yeah, obviously we agree, but don't say it, for God's sake. That did not endear him to the National Republican
And so
leadership.
I do think it's important to say, we're going to get into the Rick Scott, Mitch McConnell tension in a minute, the Republican Civil War here. But I do think it's worth keeping in mind that, they have these fundraising issues. Yeah, it's disgusting the way they're burning their own base. These tactics were so aggressive that WinRed, which is the primary online fundraising platform for the Republican Party, they banned them from using these tactics. Fundraising is always gross, and there are various levels of grossness that you can go to, and there is no doubt that people across the political spectrum abuse these tactics and prey on people who usually older people who don't really understand what they're getting into. I see this with my parents who are more prey to these sort of like scams that they'll get on their phones and stuff like that. So this is definitely a bipartisan phenomenon, but this particular tactic was so shady that even the Republican-specific fundraising platform was like, no, this is too far. But the bigger problems continue to be with the candidates, with Dobbs, with Trump being central to the election. There's clearly a lot of the dynamics that's going on here is people trying to throw somebody else under the bus for what is shaping up to be, at the very least, a disappointing election cycle for Republicans. But there's also no doubt these money issues are real and are actually an issue.
Absolutely.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.